In 2011, a year of revolutionary change in Egypt, the country's first independent English-language weekly, the Egypt Independent, published its inaugural print edition. The idea behind EI was to serve as an insightful digest of the country's dynamic times. It started life online as a digital sister publication for the country's flagship independent Arabic language paper, Al Masri Al Yawm. Known for challenging the political status quo with contentious editorials, the paper blossomed during the revolution. It weathered the storms of both the military regime era and the initial stages of the Morsi government. But EI's days would prove to be numbered. In April, the paper was shut down. The editorial team say the last edition never even made it to print. Management cited financial reasons and not editorial concerns for the closure. But the journalists, a critical, questioning bunch by nature, say they have their doubts about that. The Listening Post's Flo Phillips now on a day in the death of the Egypt Independent.
For the editor-in-chief of Egypt Independent, this was her last day in the office. Time to turn out the lights.
This is the reporter's office, the production room. On a normal day, it would be a very busy room because this is where our print edition used to be produced. But as you can see, it's completely empty now.
On April 16th, the Al Masri Media Corporation, which published the paper, informed the editorial team the paper was being shut down for financial reasons. 2 weeks later, Lina Atalla called together the Egypt Independent staff for a final meeting. Almost all of them said they had suspicions that the motive went beyond economics.
They're explaining it as a financial thing, as we are losing a lot of money and it's just not financially viable to keep us going the same way that we are. However, I think far better options than just shutting us down. In my opinion, it's not what it's about.
It was a frustrating thing. For me, I am considered a liberal in Egypt, and to start your decisions by taking some publications off the print is not something that makes you happy. Actually, it made me very sorry to do that. However, you know, I took the decision because I think that was good for the institution, good for Al Masri Al Yawm. Egypt Independent financially was not balanced at all.
What we were hoping is that if this was purely financial reasons, a wise businessman would say, well, actually there is potential. The commercial team has failed, but the editorial team proved that they can do the job. And so let's keep this going for another at least 2 months and maybe they can reach their target. We pushed the management to give us time to rescue the paper, and we put together a very coherent and kind of energetic, rescue plan.
They said, first of all, that we will increase significantly the circulation. They did it. They never exceeded the 500 circulation mark. They really brought 170 subscriptions. That was the increase that they got. That was not closing any gap.
For the past 2 years, much of the Egyptian media have walked a fine line, navigating the post-Mubarak interim military regime era and then adjusting to new media rules laid down by President Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood government. Throughout, Egypt Independent says it has refused to temper its coverage.
Don't Laugh is a pun on Morsi's attempt to silence the media and also silence humor, which we've all witnessed as a very strong and staunch political weapon in today's political landscape. No, not only that.
Lina Atalla says she was determined Egypt Independent should push boundaries wherever possible. She said she took pride in the paper's long editorial pieces on controversial topics like the Muslim Brotherhood, women's rights and the security situation, expecting her reporters to not just relay the facts, but to contextualize and often take a position.
What we mean by how to tell the story is how to put it in a larger context of this revolution and how to put it in the larger context of how the demands of this revolution remain unmet. If people are clashing with the police, we need to understand that there is a main institutional failure with regards to the reform of the security sector, for example, which is often forgotten in the reporting about these clashes. We need to always return it to the context that it belongs to, rather than just describing the rowdiness of the events as they unfold.
Egypt Independent traditionally had a little bit more freedom or ability to say things. Because it operates on the edges, it pushes the boundaries of what is acceptable to be said, or what becomes the norm, or what becomes unsayable and what becomes sayable.
It's in-depth, it's analytical, it's very nuanced, and this kind of reporting, you know, the Arabic dailies don't have either time to do it, or they're not interested in doing it, or they don't do it well because maybe the journalists there don't get enough training, or their level of professionalism demanded from them is not the same as that is demanded for English language media.
Here the problem, it was an English reading publication in Egypt. Egyptians read Arabic. Some of it was appealing, some of them were good stories. They have good investigative talents in their work, but that could be only in a different type of market. Many people talked with me about Egypt Independent, and they told me it is a good paper, and I told them, did you subscribe to it? I mean, did you pay money for it? They didn't.
In the wake of Mubarak's departure, dozens of fledgling publications sprung up. The market became saturated, and it was only a matter of time before some of the new outlets fell by the wayside. The end for Egypt Independent was not pretty. Not only was the paper closed down, but its final print edition was deemed so inflammatory by Al Masri Al-Yum, the parent company banned the paper from going to press. The EI team put it online anyway.
That was a flagrant act of self-censorship. The 50th edition never made it to print because it had a strong element of institutional critique, whereby we questioned the management about the decision to close Egypt Independent.
It was mostly full of an institutional critique of Al Masri Al-Yum as an institution and what went wrong. So it's that level of objectivity and that level of freedom of expression that's kind of boundless.
For young, bright, urban Egyptians, Egypt Independent was asking the right questions. But there are some, especially in management, who felt the paper pushed too hard. They argue that Egyptian politics is at such a sensitive stage. New media outlets should be building bridges, not burning them.
People here are complaining that, okay, well, the media, there's no freedoms. It bows to like certain interests. It's not some media here, it's all media. And the people who cause it they don't realize the problem. To them, this is just how things are done. So before you even start to change anything, there needs to be massive, massive re-education.
Egypt Independent said it tried to be part of that re-education. It failed, but its editor-in-chief remained optimistic, and this past week she launched a new, independent online publication, Mada Masra.
The media landscape in Egypt right now is incarcerated in a binary whereby the predominant voices are those of state-run media as opposed to privately owned media, and neither of these are truly autonomous and independent media, and this is what we truly need.
In the near future, we will do it digitally, which will make the cost bearable. I will say within the 3 years coming, we have plans, then probably we can come again into a printing Egypt Independent.
I would tell people not to give up, and I would tell them that there are always possibilities. They just need to be explored. Failure should always be perceived as a point of departure and not an end. So I would entice everyone to be hopeful.
More Global Village Voices now on the end of Egypt Independent.
I don't agree with the company's citation of financial reasons for the newspaper's closure. The journalists were nearly reaching their goals and discovering great potential for financial sustainability by, for example, local and international subscriptions. The management didn't give the team any extra time or help.
I really believe that Egypt Independent shut down for financial reasons. I can't see why the owners and those in charge would accept being told shut down, and they would take it sitting down and protect the government. So no, I can't imagine that the owners would have closed down and kept quiet about it.
The closure of Egypt Independent, the significance lay more in the fact that this was an English language newspaper with very brave editors, which consistently pushed the political boundaries in a way that the Arabic media, for whatever reason, often haven't been able to do. I'm not sure we can say yet that the closure of Egypt Independent has diminished the scope for independent media in the country, but it's certainly made finding independent, reliable and trustworthy voices on Egypt that bit harder.